Well, my friends, welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. Today is a very important video because we're talking about Kabbalah, what it really is, how it's the blueprint of reality, the mind of God, your soul, your psyche. This is an incredibly important topic and a highly misunderstood topic as well. Now, like I said, I can't stress enough how important this information is. It can totally and dramatically change your life. Now, the thing to remember, though, is that it's, like I said, greatly misunderstood, and it's also can be very complex. But guess what? We're going to make it simple and easy to understand so that you can apply it practically to your life. And if you've been watching my videos on alchemy, you'll have a great head start because you'll see a lot of similar ideas are reflected here in Kabbalah. So we're going to be doing an overview of what Kabbalah actually is, what the tree of life is, and what it has to do with you. Why should you even care? And you're going to see you should care. It is very important stuff, incredibly important stuff. So that is what we are talking about today. And of course, as usual, before we get started, please like and subscribe and become a member. It helps out the channel a lot. It helps spread this information because this is not just a channel, it is a revolution of consciousness. And I appreciate it when you help us spread this information around. You also get access to a lot of great stuff, like all my free downloads on alchemy. I'll probably be doing free downloads for Kabbalah as well. I haven't decided 100%, but I most likely will. You get all that for free when you are a member. You can also get access to our members only videos. We're having a members only video right after this called The Dark Origins of the Christian God Exposed. So that's going to be good. Anyway, helps out a lot. I appreciate it. Also, check out my books if you haven't yet. I have them listed in the description of this video. I recommend, if you like what we talk about in terms of like Kabbalah and alchemy, check out this book. This is my 5th book. It's called Psychogenesis and it's called Self and Universal Transformation. If you enjoy this kind of material, you'll like what's in here. But this is all in terms of psychology and analysis, not the symbolism. So it's similar, but explained in a very different way, a very logos oriented way. Okay. So let's see here. Anything else? Follow me on Spotify and you're good to go. So let's begin. Let's jump right into it. We're going to be talking about Kabbalah, the tree of life, what it has to do with you, what it really is, why it's so misunderstood. So let's begin. So just what the hell is this? What is Kabbalah in general? So when we talk about, and remember, at the heart of Kabbalah is the tree of life. If you're not familiar with what the tree of life is, here I'll show you a quick shot of this. This is the tree of life, and it's an incredibly important diagram. We're going to be doing a brief overview of the tree of life today. So this is at the heart of Kabbalah. And so what is all this? Basically what this is you can think of this as like psychological technology, soul technology. Basically, what if the universe had a blueprint? But I mean reality itself. And not just for like galaxies and planets, but also your mind, your soul, for how reality is structured. That's what Kabbalah gives us. And at its center, like I said, is the tree of life. Now, I know it sounds mystical, and it can be, but it's also incredibly practical for both reaching the highest levels of consciousness and transforming your life through manifestation. You can think of it like a kind of inner technology. Like I said, psychological technology, spiritual technology. It's a map of consciousness. It shows how energy flows into the world and into you. Okay, there's a couple things to note here though. Now, this whole system comes from Jewish mysticism, but it's been explored, expanded, and reinterpreted by a ton of different traditions, from Hermetic magicians to even depth psychologists. So right off the bat, I want to make this distinction because it's important. You're going to see Kabbalah spelled in different ways. You'll see it spelled Kabbalah with a K. You'll see Kabbalah with a Q, and you'll see Kabbalah with a C. So what's the difference? Well, Kabbalah with a K basically is when it's Jewish. C is when it's Christian, and Q is when it's Hermetic, occult, esoteric. So basically what that means is that Kabbalah with a K, in terms of like the Jewish tradition, it's very much tied to Judaism and the Torah and those beliefs and practices and culture. However, Kabbalah with a C basically is like the Christians came along and were like, hey, let's convert it so it works with Christianity. Kabbalah with a Q are when the occultists came along and said, hey, let's imbue this with magic and alchemy and all kinds of ideas. I'm trying to think of a good analogy. It's kind of like a motor, right? You can take a motor, but you can put it into a bunch of different cars. But it's the machinery, the motor that makes the thing function. It's kind of like that. So basically what I mean is, just remember that we are studying here Kabbalah with a Q. So you don't have to believe a lick of Judaism or the Torah. You don't have, if you do, that's fine, but that's not necessary. Okay. We're not, my point is we're not doing this from a religious angle. Okay. We're going deeper here into the heart of the structure of the soul, the structure of reality, the psychological, the transformational. Okay. So it's not just mysticism. It's not just magic. It's a map of how divine energy flows. Okay. So, it is about so there's one thing that I want to really make clear here. And here's a point that's what's really misunderstood. So we always have to remember there's a difference between objectively understanding reality and subjectively understanding reality. Remember, we learned this with alchemy. Remember how the four elements, fire, water, earth, and air, aren't literally about fire, water, earth, and air. They're subjective symbols that we use to communicate with the unconscious. And we know that fire represents will, air represents intellect, water represents emotions and the intuition, and earth represents groundedness and manifestation. And so if you hear someone like, oh, I can control the four elements, you'd be like, well, you're crazy. What are you even talking about? What do you think, you're Harry Potter or something? But when you realize, no, they're saying, when someone's saying, oh, I'm the master of the four elements, they mean they have mastered their will, their intellect, their emotions, their intuitions, their groundedness and manifestation, and have them all working together for their higher will. You see, it's not crazy when you understand. Of course, if you're like, oh yeah, I'm master of the elements, I can control. Of course, the average person is gonna be like, you're crazy, man. But when you understand that this is a symbolic system for communication with your unconscious mind, and you might be thinking, well, like, why not just say that then? It's because the whole idea here is about making a bridge between your consciousness and the unconscious and forming a communication. And your unconscious communicates in symbols, not words. So the symbolic archetypal symbolism is extremely powerful and will resonate with your unconscious. When you go to sleep and dream, your unconscious is talking to your consciousness. Here, we're kind of reversing it, where we are talking to our unconscious through consciousness in terms of symbolism. That's why symbolism is important here. Where's my water? I went to go get water and I filled it up and then I didn't bring it in. Hold on. Okay. So we have to understand that this is not telling us what objective reality actually is. It is a way to structure and organize our psyche, our soul, our mind into optimal patterns for reaching higher consciousness and manifestation. Okay, just to say that again, because this is really important and this is where most people misunderstand. It doesn't tell us about the objective nature of reality. It's a way of organizing our subjective psyche, soul, mind in an optimal pattern to reach higher levels of consciousness and manifest our will. So let me explain what this means. So Aleister Crowley, I'm paraphrasing Aleister Crowley. He's a very famous occultist and magician. He said something along the lines of this: to think that the tree of life accurately describes the structure of the universe is like thinking the letters CAT accurately describes the structure of a cat. You see the difference? There are some people who are like, oh yeah, the tree of life, that's exactly how objective reality operates. And Crowley is basically saying, no, that's ridiculous. That's like saying CAT explains how a cat is structured. But guess what? Even though, so why do it then? Because it's useful. Because guess what? Though the letter CAT, cat, doesn't explain the structure of a cat, it allows us to make reference to a cat. All of our words, the words that we use, don't inherently explain the structure of things. We could string sentences around to do it, but the words itself, I say human, I say cat, I say tree, doesn't tell you anything about its structure in an objective sort of real sense, but it allows us to reference these things, okay? If you didn't have words, you would just point and go, like a cave person. You wouldn't have a language. And think about how limited your life would be if you weren't allowed to use language. It would be very difficult, and it would be very hard to form concepts and communicate things with others, etc. So the Kabbalah and the tree of life is very similar. We are creating a symbolic language to map out aspects of our inner world, our mind, our soul, our psyche. So even though it doesn't accurately describe the structure like 100% in an objective way, it is extremely powerfully useful for organizing. Just like our language helps us make sense and organize the world, even though it doesn't necessarily, the words themselves tell the structure of the thing. So that's right off the bat. I just want to get that out because people confuse this all the time. That's very bad. If you've made that mistake, that's fine. But it's where a lot of people get tripped up. Okay. Another esotericist, it might have been Lon Milo DeQuette. I'm not sure. It probably was. Said something along the lines of, you can think of the tree of life like a filing cabinet. So it's like a filing cabinet for your mind. When you have, a bunch of filing cabinets are kind of outdated. We don't really, everything's digital these days. But if you have, you have a bunch of filing cabinets, if you want something, you have different drawers with different labels for the things that you want to find. And then you can take out the filing cabinet and flip through the folders and everything is labeled and you can find the thing that you're looking for. The tree of life in Kabbalah is like a filing cabinet for the structure of your mind. Ways to organize your psyche into a coherent pattern so that you can access and retrieve and organize archetypal patterns to reach higher levels of consciousness and manifest your will. Okay. This is very cool stuff. All right. This is very important stuff because think about how much our language has allowed us to develop in terms of referencing the outer world. Likewise, creating the symbolic system in correspondence with your inner world will allow you to make those leaps in evolution and development and transformation in your inner world. So that is the important thing to remember. Okay. You always have to remember what is this about? What are we doing? Because in terms of like magic and Kabbalah, people just get so distracted that they start thinking that it's objectively real or that they just get so mired then in like the symbolism, they forget what they're actually doing. So always keep that in your mind, like why we're doing this, why it even matters. Like the tree of life here is basically a symbolic structure that we are going to install into our mind, into our soul, into our psyche, so that we can organize it. Okay. Now there's many other ways that we could do this. It wouldn't have to be just the tree of life is just a very effective way to do it. There could be other ways to do it. You could invent your own way to do it. But this is a very powerful way to do it because it's been so fleshed out over years and years and years, centuries of people developing it, uncovering different patterns, etc. So it's not that it's inherently special. It has become special because of how much development it's gone through. Okay. So the most famous part of Kabbalah is the tree of life. Okay. But what I want to, we have to understand something more fundamental, and it's known as the four worlds. Okay, so we're going to learn about the tree of life, but we're also going to learn about the four worlds, and there's a reason why we're doing it this way first. Let me look at my notes here. Okay. So what I want to do is show you guys. All right, so we have the tree of life, and if this is your first time seeing it, it might seem kind of intimidating. Don't worry. It can be complex, but we're going to understand it in a very easy way, a simple way to understand it. You'll notice that there are 10 spheres. These 10 spheres are called the Sephirot or Sephirot. The Sephirot or Sephirot. And these connections between them are simply known as paths. Now, don't even worry about all the labels on the paths. I just couldn't find a diagram to print out that had those blank. You don't even need to look at those right now. We just want to understand the Sephirot for now, the Sephirot. Now, here's the cool thing. Guess what? If you've been following my alchemy series, you already understand the tree of life. I'll show you how. Remember this symbol? So if you've been following my alchemy series, if you haven't, then just ignore this. But if you have, this is the alchemical tetractys. And we understood that this was essentially the idea of a unified aspect of reality, dividing into polarized opposites, giving rise to structure, balance, and spirit, and then emanating the four elements, which is, of course, earth would be groundedness, water, emotions, intuition, air, the intellect, and fire, the will. So remember when I pointed to the tree of life and I said, you could just invent your own structure. This alchemical tetractys is just an alternative structure. So for example, if we were just to rearrange these into this pattern, you would have a pretty good idea of what the tree of life was about. So look, I have done this actually. You take a look here. These symbols are all the symbols over here, but they're arranged in the same pattern as the tree of life. Okay? And by looking at this, you can already get, for those of you who are familiar with these symbols, if not, don't worry, you don't have to know what all this means. I'm just, for those who have seen the alchemy videos, you'll have a good idea. You'd have a pretty good grasp of what the tree of life does and what it's about. Now, I will say, okay, don't memorize that. All right. Those symbols that I've showed you arranged into a tree of life pattern, don't memorize that because those aren't actual correspondences. The things that I have there don't actually correspond to the tree of life in a real sense. I'm just showing you, I'm showing you how you could get a pretty good grasp of understanding the basic nature of how it operates through those symbols. Okay. So, and like I said, if you don't know anything about alchemy, don't worry. Just we're going to continue now. Not even thinking about that. So we have here the tree of life, and the tree of life has the various Sephirot, the Sephirot that emanate, and they're ordered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and they each have a specific function, a certain thing that they represent, a certain thing that they do. The important thing to understand about this is that there is a flow. We want to understand the flow of this system. It's a flow of energy. And so from here, we have a flow of energy from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 and to 10. It's a sort of zigzag shape. And this flow of energy goes from pure potential, which is the top Sephirah, to pure actuality and manifestation, and everything else are the steps in between. Okay, this is pure potential, This is actualized manifestation, real. And everything else are the steps in between to get to that phase. Now, here's a part that might be that I want to clarify because it might be a little confusing. The tree of life is both a symbol for the structure of reality. Remember, not in an objective way, but in a symbolic way, okay? A way to reference certain aspects. But the tree of life is both a symbol for how reality works in a symbolic way, but it's also symbolic for your psyche. So it's both. So what I mean by that, let's take Malkut, which is about manifestation. If we're talking about the structure of reality, Malkut is literally the physical world. That's what Malkut is, the physical world. But if we're talking about in terms of your soul or the psyche, Malkut is no longer the physical world. It's your action, the thing that you do. You actually doing something. So do you see? You can look at the tree of life from being a symbolic way of seeing the structure of reality, or you can look at it as a symbolic way of the structure of the psyche. Because the basic idea here is as above, so below, as within, so without. As the structure of the universe, so is your structure. So the structure of the mind of God, or the universe, or the collective, is also every single one of our individual psyches as well. And remember, when I say God, I don't mean like God in a biblical sense here. I'm talking about the source, like the energy, just the energetic structure of reality, which we all are. We are all God. We are God. Okay, I want to make that very clear. We are God. But this symbol of the tree of life can be used to understand the structure of existence or our individual souls and psyche. We are going to focus more on how it's applied to our individual soul and psyche. Why? Because it's much more practical. Because it's better for understanding how to reach higher states of consciousness and manifest your will. It's interesting to think about it in the other way, and we'll touch on that. But the best way here, our main focus is going to be on the structure of the soul slash psyche. Okay, but so I basically have told you, hey, this is pure potential, this is pure actualization, and everything else are the steps in between to get us from 1 to 10. Okay, but that's obviously very vague, and just a brief overview. But I want to show you this is nothing scary. This is just it can be understood in a very simple way: potential, actualization, and everything in between. But we have to understand how this flow of information works. And to understand this flow of information, we're going to introduce the concept of something known as the 4 Kabbalistic worlds. So before we learn about the 10 Sephirot, we're going to learn about the 4 Kabbalistic worlds, because it's simple. You're going to learn 4 rather than 10. We'll get to the 10, but understanding the 4 first will help us understand the 10 in an easier way. So let's do this here. I'm going to bring out another diagram. See if I can just actually, let me get rid of all this. So I'll bring out another diagram here. And as you can see, it's the exact same diagram. It's the tree of life. It's just been divided into quarters. There's sections, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 sections here. Now, what you'll notice is that the 4 sections each have a name. So there's Absolute. And okay, before that, I want you to notice, so they're each associated with an element. This is why, having the alchemy background helps as well. So the first world is represented by fire, the second, water, the third, air, and the fourth, earth. Okay? Now, it's also represented by the tetragrammaton. If you don't know what the tetragrammaton is, it's Yod He Vav He. Now, I want you to remember, this has nothing to do with like the biblical God. Yod He Vav He is it's like a symbolic system. Just like air represents a certain idea, intellect. These letters stand for certain aspect of the mind and the psyche. So in terms of Kabbalah, Yod, in terms of the four Kabbalistic worlds are associated with Yod, He, Vav, He, which is also associated with fire, water, air, and earth. And you can see that there are sectioned off different parts of the tree of life, because different parts of the tree of life are associated with these four worlds. So now, what are these four worlds? The first world is called Absolute. The first world is called Absolute. What is Absolute all about? Let me see here. So Absolute is the world of emanation. This is pure divinity. No form, no thought, just the raw presence of being. It's very close to the base level of reality, the base level of existence. Okay. So this is basically the part where everything begins. Nothing is separate yet. Okay. So anyway, it's the world. It's Absolute is known as the world of emanation. Okay. It's the world of emanation. Basically, this is the divine realm, the purest, most unfiltered expression of divinity. There's no separation here. It's just unity. And this is where the seeds of archetypes live. It's associated with fire. Why? Because what does fire represent? Will. So Absolute is like the primal, not primal, it's divine, but the fundamental will of reality, the thing that gets things going, where all things emanate from, the pure potential from which all things will arise but haven't arisen yet. So that is what Absolute represents. It's associated with divinity. It's the spark of everything else. And as you can see, it's associated with the Sephirot Keter. The Sephirot Keter. What I'm going to do as well is because, there's like the proper way to pronounce it, and then there's the easy way to pronounce it. I'm just going to do both. So when it comes to pronouncing this stuff, pronounce it however you want. Doesn't matter. Like I say Kabbalah, you can say Qabalah. Does it matter? No, doesn't matter. Does it matter if you say Sephirot or Sephirot? No. Or Sephiroth or Sephir? No, it doesn't. You can say whatever you want. But I'm just going to give you, just for completeness' sake, how it's pronounced, and then an easier way to, because some of these words can be kind of hard to remember if they're in in their, in certain pronunciations. Okay. So anyway, Keter or Keter is in the world of Absolute. And so this is the world of pure will, the divine realm, the world of emanation. Then we have the next world, which is Bria or Beria. So Bria or Beria is associated with water. This is the world of creation. First we had emanation, now we have creation. This is where the seed starts to become an idea. You can think of like the previous world, Absolute, is like the seed of things. This is where it starts to grow. It's not physical or anything like that yet, but this is where archetypes are beginning to really take root. This is the realm of the collective unconscious, the realm of the collective unconscious, the realm of primordial archetypes, all the archetypes that we associate with, even in like Jungian psychology, or just in the world, like the hero, the old man, the mother. That's the realm of archetypes. It's a fluid realm because it's associated with water. So it's associated with intuition. And that would make sense. It's the intuitive realm. And so it is a step forward in Do you see how we're having a progression here? We just had a seed of an idea. Now we've had it blossom into an archetype. I will give, if this seems vague, don't worry. I'm going to give you an example in just a minute to make it concrete and clear, because I know it can sound kind of abstract, but let me just explain it first. Then I will give you a concrete example that's going to make it super easy to understand. Okay. So this realm is also the realm of archangels. Remember, Absolute was the divine realm. Bria is the realm of archangels. What does that mean? Not literal angels flying around with wings, archetypal forces in the collective unconscious. So Bria is where you tap into the collective unconscious to access those archetypes. When you connect to something that's like bigger than just yourself in terms of like your egoic self, these are where the archetypes reside. And archetypes in this sense are represented by archangels. So, and of course, you don't have, here we have Chokhmah and Binah as the Sephirot of Bria. We have Chokhmah and Binah of the Sephirot of Bria. And so we'll explain what these mean later. Don't worry, you don't have to memorize that yet. I just want to get you show you what the four worlds are. Then we'll briefly talk about what the Sephirot actually are and how they're related. So the next world we have is the world of Yetzirah or Yetzirah. So Yetzirah or Yetzirah. And Yetzirah is the world of formation. So what's happening now is this is where things get personal. Absolute, just divine sparks. Bria, the collective unconscious and archetypes. Yetzirah is related to air, and it gets more personal because this is where those universal archetypes start to manifest in your personal unconscious, your inner world. So this is about your thoughts, your emotions, and your personal unconscious. So in Yetzirah, this is basically the domain of what's known as complexes. If you don't know what a complex is, don't worry. In a nutshell, what a complex is how an archetype manifests in your unconscious personally. Remember, archetypes are in the collective unconscious. Yetzirah is your consciousness and your personal unconscious. It's and the realm of complexes. The realm of complexes are how particular archetypes represent, manifest in you. So what does that mean? Think about the shadow self. The shadow is an archetype in the collective unconscious because everyone's got one. That's what it means by being in the collective unconscious. Everyone's got it. It's shared by everyone. It's collective. So the shadow self would technically be in Bria. But the shadow self manifests in your personal unconscious in a very personal way, and thus it becomes a shadow complex. What is a shadow complex? The shadow complex is simply what your personal shadow is. So remember, each and every one of us has a shadow, but guess what? Our shadows are going to be different. I always say it's kind of like a recycle bin on your computer. If you have a PC, you can put stuff in your recycle bin to throw it away, but pretend you can't empty the recycle bin. You just fill it up. That's kind of like the shadow. You're out of sight, out of mind. You're shoving it away. So in this analogy, everyone has a recycle bin, but everyone's going to put different things in the recycle bin. That's kind of like the difference between an archetype and a complex. The archetype is the thing that everyone shares. The complex is how it manifests in you personally. So Yetzirah or Yetzirah, the world of formation, is the realm of your personal unconscious, how the archetypes manifest in your unconscious and consciousness, how it gets filtered through your mind. And it's your consciousness as well, your emotions. So really, it's like, it's your personal mind, the realm of, and that's why it's associated with air. Air goes with intellect. It's your thoughts, it's your communication, but it's also your personal unconscious as well. Dreams, symbols, complexes, fears, desires. Okay, so it's all the personal stuff. Yetzirah is the realm of angels. Remember, Bria was archangels. So we had Atzilut, which was divinity. Then we had Bria, which were archangels. And then Yetzirah, which are angels. And the angels, again, they're not fluffy, cloudy wing creatures. They're your complexes, structures in your psyche. And by the way, if at some point you're like, why the hell are we learning this? Like, what does this have to do with anything? Just go with it, okay? Because if you understand right away, that's totally fine. But if you don't feel bad, because it will click at some point, and it is important. If you think this is silly, why are we talking about archangels and angels and fire and what? You'll see why it's important at a certain point. It's kind of like if you want to read a book, but you haven't learned language yet. You have to first learn what the alphabet sounds like and how to string words together. It might be very frustrating, but once you understand it and you can read the book, you're like, holy shit, I have access to all this other information that I didn't even know was there. This is going to allow you to access information in your psyche, in your structure, your own personal structure. So this is huge. This is really important stuff. Okay. So anyway, Yetzirah is the realm of complexes. It's the realm of psychological forces. And it's the stuff that runs the show behind the scenes, behind your thoughts. Okay. Also, do me a favor in the comments. Let me know. Do you want me to just tell you the easy pronunciations, or do you like to hear both, like Yetzirah versus Yetzirah? Let me know, because I want to make it as easy to understand as possible, but also give you the info so that you have a full understanding of it. Anyway. So we're almost done with the 4 worlds here, and then we'll move on to the actual Sephirot. So the next world. Oh, and you can see, by the way, Yetzirah has a ton of Sephirot. There's a bunch. Atzilut was 1, Bria was 2, Yetzirah, we got a bunch. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got a whole bunch there. And then guess what? We have Asaya. There's just 1, Malkut. But that doesn't mean that it's not important. Malkut is Asaya. It's associated with Earth. If we were to be talking about the tree of life in terms of like how reality is structured, Asaya would be the physical world, the realm of space, time, and matter. That would be what everything else, all the other worlds, would be the energy underlying reality, structuring itself into different ways until finally it's produced in the physical world. But remember, so in physical terms, Malkut represents the physical world. Asaya is the physical world. But in terms of what the main reason that we're using this for is to understand and structure our psyche, our mind, our soul. So in that context, this is the world of action, not necessarily the physical world, but the realm of action. So Asaya and Malkut is where you act, where you make choices, where you manifest. It's the world of action. It's where the idea that started all the way up in Atzilut goes all the way down to the different levels and then finally ends up in a thing that you do. It's the realm of Earth. It's represented by Earth, which is groundedness and manifestation. In terms of the psyche, it's your behaviors, your decisions. It's what you do. So you can see how like Atzilut was a basic idea. In Bria, it gets formed into an archetype. In Yetzirah, those archetypes manifest in you, in your personal unconscious, organize how your mind works, and then results in Asaya, which is the thing that you do because of all that. It's like a big chain reaction. The very top is the spark, and it goes through all this development until poof. And Malkut is also known as the fruit of the tree of life. You see, you can think of Keter or Keter as the seed. Malkut is the fruit. Everything in between is the seed sprouting and growing and blossoming and blooming, and then finally the fruit. So from absolute to Asaya, you go from seed to fruit, potential to the final product. Okay. Now, if this is a little bit abstract, let me give you an analogy, a simple example. Let me give you a simple example. So let's use, and this is, I don't know who first started this example, but it's used so much in Kabbalah. I've heard Lan Mailud Deket use it. I've heard so many like traditional Kabbalists talk about this, but it's the idea of a chair. Okay, so we're going to understand a chair in terms of these four worlds. I know it might sound kind of silly, but it'll give you an idea of what's going on here. Okay, so let's say that you're tired, okay, and you want to rest. So in absolute is the highest world. It's the divine spark, just an impulse towards something. It's just like the energy behind it. And so in absolute, it would simply be rest. That's it. Not the concept of a chair or anything, just rest. A very basic underlying idea, that's absolute. It's the spark, rest, the will to rest. In Bria or Beria, that impulse starts to become structured into something. And you can think of it in absolute, the divine emanates the idea of rest. Then the archangels come in and they get to work on this idea. They're like, okay, well, to rest, how can we develop rest? Something to sit on, something that could be sat on, like a chair. So they would come up with the idea of a chair, not a real physical chair, not even a specific kind of chair, just the concept of a resting place that you can put your butt on. You can see how it's more developed now, but it's very broad. And so in Bria, the archangels form the archetype, the pattern, the archetypal pattern of chair. In Yetzirah or Yetzirah, that idea is then taken and formed into a specific kind of chair. So you can imagine, because remember, Bria are archangels, Yetzirah are angels. So you can imagine the archangels like telling the angels like, hey, we got this idea, we need a chair. The angels in Yetzirah then get to work on specific types of chair, all kinds of chairs, lazy boys, recliners, dining chairs, whatever. They just come up with all these different ideas, all these very particular, specific, tons of ideas of kinds of chairs. But they're not building the chair. It's still they make the blueprint of it. They're like, we're going to make this detailed like IKEA. If you go to IKEA, it's the instructions on how to put the thing together, basically. That's the angels in Yetzirah, what they're doing. They're taking the idea and forming it into something specific. Hey, I want a black chair recliner with cup holders. Then in Asaya, that's when the chair actually physically gets built. That's when the chair is, everything is set. The chair is actually built. It's finally physical. So you had just all the way up in absolute, just the idea of the will to rest that got transformed and developed into something to sit on in Bria. In Yetzirah, that got transformed into a specific blueprint of a chair. And then in Asaya, it's the actual built physical chair. So now, of course, this is kind of a silly idea, but you get the idea of different grades of emanation, different grades of going from potentiality to actuality. And we wouldn't have to do so, if we were thinking of in terms of the psyche, we would think of something a little bit different. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. We could think of like the idea of justice. Let's say Atzilut was just like the idea of justice. And Bria might be like, okay, well, for there to be justice, we need things like institutions that set rules or something. And then Yetzirah would be like, okay, we need a legal system, we need a court system, we need like the very specific things for justice to occur, all that. And then Malkut would be that in action. And so that's this applied to like an idea that's formed in the psyche and then gets manifest in the real world. So you could pick anything. You could pick anything and apply it to it. But the basic structure here is that you just have different grades. You just have a flow of energy that goes from potentiality to actuality. There's 4 worlds: Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, Asaya. Real simple. And it's fire, water, air, ground. Fire, will, the first spark of an idea. Bria, the watery intuition of the collective unconscious and archetypes. Yetzirah, specifically formed ideas. Asaya, you act on it. You do the thing. So why is this important? Because remember, we are forming a symbolic map and structure of the psyche and of the soul. As we do this, we are going to be able to organize our soul, our psyche, our mind better, such that what ends up in Asaya, that is the real world of our actions and manifestation, gives us the life that we want, or the world that we want. You're organizing it in structure, because remember, you start from idea and you get to action. But if everything's out of balance and out of whack, your action might not be a great action. Like think of the Keter, Keter is the idea of justice. Well, think of someone who's super imbalanced getting a totally screwed up idea of justice. It's going to actually turn into an action of injustice because it's so screwed up. Or you might have the idea of wanting to be on a diet. That's your just spark of an idea of be fit or something like that. Well, if you don't have everything else, if everything is structured the way it should be, you go from be fit to actuality of losing weight. But if not, if you don't have your energy centers structured and organized in the right way, it's going to result in an action that might be contrary to what you want, eating junk food or something, because you haven't balanced it right. So, hopefully, and always please, leave me comments. I'm always curious what's easy to understand and what's like, hey, this needs more explanation. I very much value your comments on that sort of thing because it helps me know what should I go into more detail on, or, hey, you know what? That was pretty simple. We can move on. Okay. So here we have, we've understood here the 4 worlds, and you can understand that the 4 worlds are just different steps in going from potentiality, development to actuality. So the reason why we brought this in first was because we'll have to reference this in again. But where did my, oh, here's my diagram. Let me put this one back. So now that we've understood that, well, actually, you know what? Let's stay with this one. I think it's helpful to stay with this one. Okay. So now that we've understand the 4 worlds, let's briefly understand the Sephirot. Now, why does this help us? Because remember, we just understood how something develops and flows. There's a flow. Well, guess what? The Sephirot are going to do the same thing. They're going to flow. It's just more detailed. It's going to flow from Keter to Chokhmah to Bina to Chesed to Gevurah to Tiferet to Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malkut. So once again, Keter to Chokhmah to Bina to Chesed to Gevurah to Tiferet to Netzach to Hod, to Yesod, to Malkut. Now, don't worry, it's not complicated. It's going to follow the same pattern. It's just we're getting more details. So what do these details actually represent? Like what are these Sephirot? What do they actually mean here? Well, Keter or Keter is called the crown. And it's very similar to Absolute, because look up here, we just have Keter and Absolute. So it's the pure will. It's the first spark of awareness. Just the basically like divine energy from which everything else will emanate. It's pure potentiality. It's up here in Absolute. It's pure potentiality, pure divinity, pure undifferentiated anything. Okay? And then that energy flows to Chokhmah. Chokhmah is wisdom. And by the way, I'm going to go through this a little fast because this is just an overview. Don't worry, we will go into more detail later. Okay? So if you're like, whoa, slow down. Don't worry, you don't need to memorize all this. I'm just giving you a brief overview and we'll go into more detail either. So you have the pure undifferentiated base of creation, that then that energy goes to Chokhmah. Chokhmah is wisdom. So what is this wisdom? This is like pure force or pure energy. Now, it's pure force and pure energy and like pure information. So what you could think of Chokhmah as being like is kind of like all the energy of reality, all the information of reality. But guess what? It's not ordered. So imagine that you just had like a bunch of code, but it wasn't, or it was just like a mass of ones and zeros. It wasn't ordered in the right way. It's disorganized. So it's all of the raw wisdom, meaning like information. That's why it's called wisdom. It's the raw wisdom, the raw information of reality is this like forceful energy, but it's not yet differentiated. Okay. So then we have Binah. Binah is called understanding. And what Binah does, the reason why it's called understanding is because it gives structure and form to all that crazy energy. So that crazy energy goes to Binah, and Binah gives it structure and form. Sometimes Binah is considered the womb of existence because a womb structures something, right? Womb like takes in the energy and then structures it and develops it. So it basically shapes all that chaotic energy of Chokhmah. So you have Keter, which is like the pure undifferentiated will, goes to Chokhmah, then goes to Binah, which is the idea of structure. So you have all that like massive information. Binah is like, hey, let's order this information so you can understand it. You see, that's the difference. Some people are like, wisdom, understanding, what's the difference? According to this, sometimes the words are a little odd, but you get it here. Wisdom is the information. Binah is structuring the information so you can understand it. Okay? And so this is in the world of Bria. So it's the collective unconscious. This is where archetypes are forming. You have the energy of the archetypes and then the structure of the archetypes. Then this goes all the way to Chesed or Hesed. And what Hesed is called, it's called mercy usually. And that can seem a little weird, but basically what this does is the energy, the structured energy goes from Binah to Hesed. This is about basically expansion. It's been, different words are used to describe it, but it's like mercy, love, empathy, generosity, giving. Like think of it in terms of giving. And why is it in terms of giving it? Because it's taking that information and it's like it's projecting it. It's putting it out there. It's expanding it. So it takes the energy from Binah and expands it. But then it goes to Gevurah or Gevurah. Now, Gevurah is considered by some like a dangerous Sephirot or Sephirah. But Sephirah is the opposite of Hesed in that it's Gevurah is called strength, but it's sometimes called severity as well. It's Gevura is often called severity. So mercy versus severity. And what it does is it forms boundaries and discipline and justice and judgment. It can be very, very harsh. So basically, it takes the expanding energy of Hesed, and Gevura goes, hold on, we need some boundaries here. We need to put in some boundaries, some do not cross lines. That's what Gevura does. That energy gets sent to Tiferet or Tifereth or Tiferet. And it's called beauty. Okay, that's kind of a weird word. Why does it called beauty? It basically means balance and harmony. This is where you have the opposites kind of balanced. You want to balance mercy with severity into Tiferet, which is balance. This is also where you're going to find your central self as well. It's smack dab in the middle of the tree. It's your central self. This goes over to Netzach. Netzach is Gevura is also will, but whatever. Netzach is, sorry. Well, I'm trying to do a brief overview and not go on and on and on because I have a tendency to do that. I'm trying to move on here. Netzach is called victory, but Netzach is basically desire, emotion, passion. It's the force that drives us. So it can be anything from it's desire, love, even like love is often associated with Netz. It's emotions, essentially. It's the emotions, the desires, the passions that drive us. And then we have Hod, which is glory. But what is Hod? It's the intellect. It's logic. It's reason. It's language. It's structure. It's communication. It's the power to name things, to explain things, to analyze things. So just like Hesed went to Gevura, and Gevura was like, hey, we need to put some boundaries on this expansion. Netzach goes to Hod, where it says, all this desire and passion, we need to balance it with logic, reason, and structure here. And then this goes to Yesod. Yesod is called the foundation. It's the subconscious, dreams. It's your dream realm. It's your subconscious realm, the filter between inner and outer reality. And you can see all this was in Yetzirah. All this was in Yetzirah because you can see there's a lot going on in your personal unconscious. You have like empathy and justice and balance and emotions and intellect, your unconscious. There's a lot happening down here. And then, of course, you have Malkut and Asaya, which is the physical. Well, it's action. It's the final element where everything that started ends up in you actually doing something. Remember, Asaya is the world of action. Malkut is the kingdom. It's the fruit of the tree of life. It is the result. So Malkut is extremely important. And you can see that like Malkut contains all of this. Like, and that's it. Keter contains everything in potential. Malkut contains everything, and that all of it goes into the final result. It's just in a different way. Pure potential, pure actuality, but you need to be able to balance all of these things in between to understand or to get the desired result that you want. Because if you want to manifest things in your life, you have to make sure that the energy is flowing the way it needs to be. And let me tell you, 99.9% of people out there don't have the optimal energy flow going on. And so guess what? We get this shit world we have here today because people aren't balanced enough. And this Malkut or kingdom we have is a shitty one. That's why we want to create the kingdom of heaven on earth here and now, our kingdom, our citadel, our will be done. So let me see my notes here. This was a very brief overview of what Kabbalah is, the four worlds, and the tree of life. Now, in talking in terms of the tree of life, like the different Sephirot, I went through them very fast. So if you're like, either like, hey, that seems kind of simple, or like, whoa, you went too fast, I didn't get it. Don't worry. We will do another video going in detail because there's so much to unpack here, what each one does, all the correspondences related to them, so you have a really clear, in-depth understanding. There's just a bunch of cool stuff. Like, I'll just give you one example. We didn't even talk about this area right here. You know this area? this whole area is a big blank space, right? It's called the abyss. And there is a hidden Sephirot known as Da'at, or knowledge, that's not listed on here, that allows one to cross the abyss and reach the highest levels of consciousness. I just want to, kind of give you, there's a lot to this is what I mean. We just did a very basic overview. But what I want to know from you guys is, what do you guys think about this? Is this something that you want to continue to explore? Do you want the details? Is there something that's unclear to you? Any and all comments I appreciate on this, because I want to make sure that it gets across in a way where you really understand like why this is actually so important, because you're literally creating a structure, a tool, a piece of psychological technology, a piece of soul technology that will allow you to communicate with your unconscious and structure your unconscious. Like, think about how that's wildly important, incredibly important. It's the difference between, human beings that have learned language and haven't learned language. Imagine a society that's learned language versus a society that hasn't. What kind of world would result from those two? Obviously, the one that understood language would be much more advanced than the one that didn't have language. Now imagine a society where they haven't structured their internal psyche and formed this way of communicating with themselves. Ones that have versus ones that haven't. Same kind of thing. The ones that have, you'd have a beautiful world, kingdom of heaven on earth, high levels of consciousness, altruism, and a benevolent world. You don't, if they're not organized, what kind of world you get? This one. This shitty one right here. That's the world you get, because no one does this, which is why it's so important for us to be able to communicate and spread this information. Because like I said, this isn't just a channel. This is a revolution of consciousness. This is the kind of stuff that's going to change the world. There's a lot of little things we can do to fix the world, but for like real, lasting, sustainable change, it must be a new level of consciousness. And this is the first one way to begin to organize the mind to reach those highest levels of consciousness. So by the way, as well, remember to check out my books. If you like what we talk about here today, check out Psychogenesis. Psychogenesis is very similar to these ideas, but not in terms of symbolism, in terms of philosophy. So if you like learning more logic-based without symbolism, this has a lot of information there. If you do like the symbolism, this will give you supplementary information to be able to inject into symbolism so much better, to understand like the mechanism behind things. Okay. Anyway, I'd recommend this one. Psychogenesis, Self and Universal Transformation. Make sure you become a member if you haven't. It helps out a lot. We're having a members only video right now that's called The Real Origins of the Christian God Exposed. That's going to be an interesting one. And when you become a member, you can also get PDF downloads. I'll probably be making a PDF download for this particular video and on Kabbalah, so that you can have, there's a lot, so that you can have quick and easy information to reference in PDF form. So that helps out a lot. And make sure you give me a follow on Spotify. Thank you so much, my friends. I'm going to give a big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Nusalina, Dallas, Sacred, Mario, Vanuli, Celsius, Irresistible, Chris Magistus, and TDFD, and everyone else. Thank you very much.